What's all this? I asked, confused when I saw bags piled up by the door. I'm moving in with my mom because you don't do the housework, David replied coldly. You decided that without talking to me first? I said, clearly upset. This is my house, you don't get to question my decisions, my husband snapped, his voice angry. Since I'm the one paying for everything, I think I do have a say, I shot back. It's better with mom here, so you need to leave, David said firmly. His cold words left me shocked, but I stayed calm. Okay, I'll leave, I said quietly, forcing a small smile. David and his mom had no idea what my leaving would really mean for them. My name is Julia, and I'm a 32-year-old office worker. I met David through a blind date set up by a friend. He was friendly and outgoing, and we quickly became close, got married, and now we're in our 5th year of marriage. We don't have kids yet. David had been living with his mom before we married, but after we tied the knot, we built a new house on his family's land. It was David's idea when we got married. I want to live near my mom because I'm worried about her being alone, but I also want our life as a couple to be just the two of us. This way, I think we get the best of both worlds, David explained. But won't we have a mortgage for the house? I asked. The house will be fully paid for by the inheritance from my dad, David reassured me, so we won't have a mortgage. The land is free too, the house will be in my name, and we'll just pay my mom some monthly support. Does that sound good? He asked. I wasn't sure. Is that really okay? Won't you worry about your mom's expenses? We'll help her, and she also gets a pension and does part-time work, so it should be fine, David said. Okay, that makes sense, I agreed. David added, plus, when you have late shifts, my mom can help with the housework. That should be a big help for you. Even though we lived in different houses on the same land, I was excited about our newlywed life and building our home together. Getting help with housework seemed like a great idea. But later, I realized how naive I had been. At first, everything was perfect. We both worked a lot, but the house was small, easy to take care of, and clean. My mother-in-law didn't visit often because she was busy with her job. We shared household expenses, but then one day, David made a new suggestion. I'll cover all the house costs, but I want you to send money to my mom every month. You can just transfer it to her bank account, he said. I was surprised. How much are we talking about? About $1,500 a month, David answered. When I checked the numbers, I saw that $1,500 was actually less than what we'd been sending before, so I decided to send $2,300 a month without telling David. The $2,300 took a big chunk of my salary, but things like utilities, groceries, medical costs, and clothes cost even more, so, in reality, David was still paying more. David's salary went into a joint account that I used for the transfers, and the remaining money went into our savings. This worked fine for about a year, but then things started changing when my mother-in-law quit her job and began visiting more. I'm getting older, so I decided to quit my job and just relax, she said. One day, David said kindly, "It's okay, Mom, you don't have to push yourself anymore. We'll take care of you." "Thank you, David, you're always so thoughtful," she said, smiling. At first, it was a nice moment between mother and son, but then, looking around the house, she said, "It looks like you haven't been cleaning. There's dust everywhere. I can't ignore this." I apologized. "I'm really sorry. I've been so busy with work that I haven't had time to clean." "That's just an excuse," she replied coldly. "You live in David's house, so you should at least do the basic housework, and I've heard you're taking shortcuts with cooking. Is that true?" "I try to make simple meals when I get home late from work, but I do my best," I explained. "Maybe it was a mistake to choose you as David's wife," she said harshly, "and after all these years, the fact that you still don't have children is also a problem." I thought to myself that not having children might not be entirely my fault, but arguing would only make things worse. Originally, we had agreed that my mother-in-law would help with housework when needed, but it seemed both David and his mother had forgotten that agreement. Anyway, her constant complaints made life difficult, so I chose to ignore them, but soon, a bigger issue came up. The balance in our joint account was getting low. The problem was, David's salary hadn't been paid for 3 months. "What's going on with your salary?" I asked him. "Oh, about that," David started, looking uncomfortable. What he said next shocked me. I quit my job and have been looking for a new one." I couldn't believe it. "You quit your job?" And you didn't tell me? I said, feeling angry. Yeah, sorry, he said, looking guilty. My boss was really strict, always nagging me for small mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes, right? He explained that one mistake had caused the company a big loss, but it didn't seem like he fully understood his part in it. I thought to myself that I'd be upset if I were his boss, but since he'd already quit, we needed to figure out what to do next. Do you have any chance of getting a new job? I asked. The problem is, I can't find a company that fits my skills, David admitted. At this point, shouldn't you take any job, even if it's not perfect? We can't afford to be picky right now, I said, frustrated. No, I want to choose carefully for my next job, one I can keep long term, he said firmly. But what about our finances? I asked, confused. You work too, so you can help support us, right? David replied casually. It seemed like he wasn't going to change his mind, so I decided to hold on until he found a new job, but our household income had halved. After paying the usual remittances to my in-laws, we had barely anything left, so we started dipping into our savings. There wasn't much left, so I decided to work more hours to increase my income. Luckily, my job valued my skills and agreed to my request, but when I came home late, my mother-in-law was often waiting for me. How did it come to this? She said, I can't believe you don't do any housework. I'm sorry, it's because of work, I explained. Excuses again, going out to play, she continued, ignoring me. And now you're asking David for more money? I replied, I need the money for living costs and the remittances. My salary alone isn't enough. At this, my mother-in-law's anger became clear. What, complaining about just $2,300? Living in David's house for free and not doing housework? Unbelievable, she said angrily. I couldn't understand how she could downplay $2,300. That was money I worked hard for, I thought. She seemed to think the remittances were something owed to her, forgetting their true value. Because you don't do the housework, I have to, or David will suffer, she kept complaining. It's hard with such an incompetent daughter-in-law. Though she acted like she was in charge, my mother-in-law often relied on ready-made meals and only did laundry for herself and David. The kitchen was always a mess, and when she cooked, it was just for her and David, never for me. She'd usually just tell me to eat whatever was left over when I got home. David was always lounging on the sofa, watching TV, not saying anything, even while I faced my mother-in-law's harsh words. Over time, I began to lose any affection I had for my husband. David's job search wasn't going anywhere. Hey, I said, trying to get his attention, if this keeps up, we'll run out of savings. Couldn't you get a part-time job to help with the expenses? What part-time job? David snapped, glaring at me. This house is in my name, it's mine. You're just living here and can't even take care of me properly, so it's only right that you cover the living expenses. The future looked uncertain if things continued this way. I'm paying for the living expenses and sending money to your mom, I replied, feeling frustrated. You know there's a limit to what I can earn. Money for your mom? It's only $2,300, right? Stop complaining. If you don't like it, just leave, he shouted, slamming his hand on the table before storming out of the room. David belittled the hard-earned $2,300 I sent each month, and our marriage had never felt more broken. Amid all this, I got some unexpected good news. David had a chance to get a job at a company owned by a friend of his mom. The pay wasn't great, but I was happy he would be working. He was given a trial period of 3 months. I don't think this company is right for me, David said, looking uneasy, but it's hard to say no since my mom introduced me. I decided to encourage him, saying, as long as you're willing to work, that's fine, just do your best to secure a full-time job. But I never imagined this job would lead to more problems. David started going to work every morning with energy, but after a month, he began coming home late and sometimes didn't come home at all. His jacket smelled of an unfamiliar woman's perfume. Worse, he wasn't contributing his salary to our household and even started taking money from our joint account without asking, while still sending money to my mother-in-law. I decided to stop putting money into the joint account. David didn't like this, and he confronted me. Why aren't you putting money in the account? The balance is almost empty. Where's your salary going? He demanded. You're not paying for the living expenses, I responded. Tell me what you're doing with the money. Shut up, he yelled. I have friends to hang out with, you wouldn't understand. That's not right, I said, upset. Am I the only one who has to earn and manage everything? If you pay your part, I'll pay mine. This house is mine. It's only natural for you to contribute money, David insisted. I was shocked by his attitude, expecting me to cover everything while using my earnings for his social life. I also started to suspect he was having an affair, though I didn't have proof at that moment. I decided to look into his suspicious behavior. Since I couldn't afford a private investigator, I decided to do it myself. While David was asleep, I checked his phone. He usually used fingerprint authentication, so I unlocked it with his finger while he slept. It worked. What I found shocked me: frequent messages with a woman named Judith. The content was alarming. Had a great time on our date today. Wish we could be together forever. Would you marry me? I'll leave my wife. Wait for me. I'm so excited for our new life together. I saved these messages and transferred them to my phone. Then, I decided to find out who this Judith was. One day, after work, I came home to find several bags piled up at the entrance. What's all this? I asked, confused. I've decided to live with my mom instead of you since you don't do housework, David said coldly. You made this decision without talking to me? I asked. This is my house. You don't have the right to complain about my decisions, David snapped angrily. Since I'm paying for the living expenses and the remittances, I should have a say, I argued. It's better with mom here, so you need to leave, David said firmly. His cold attitude shocked me. My mother-in-law, who was there, added, a wife who doesn't do housework is useless. I realized that trying to stay here was pointless, so I made my decision. Fine, I'll leave this house, I said calmly, with a small smile. Really? Are you serious? David asked, surprised. But I will make sure you pay for your affair, I continued, my tone firm. Affair? What are you talking about? David said, getting flustered. I mean Judith, the 27-year-old receptionist at your work, right? You're planning to invite her here instead of me, I accused. Don't be ridiculous, you're imagining things, he stammered. But I have proof, I replied. I showed him the screenshots of the messages I had saved. The day before, I had gone to David's work to gather information about Judith and caught them secretly entering a hotel, snapping pictures as proof. Seeing the evidence, David couldn't deny it anymore and tried to make weak excuses. We've been fighting a lot lately, and I'm really stressed out. Mom says she can't stand having you around, he said, fumbling for words. But that doesn't justify cheating, I said, hurt. Why would you do something like this? I couldn't help it. Judith understands me in a way you never could, David said, his voice full of regret. His words about being drawn to a younger woman disgusted me. All the effort I'd put into our marriage now seemed like a waste. Enough, you'll pay for your infidelity, and I'll claim it from Judith too, I said firmly. I don't have money, you know that, David said defensively. Then work with Judith to build a new life together. Your mom will help with housework, right? So it shouldn't be a problem, I retorted coldly. My mother-in-law, who didn't know about Judith, was shocked at first, but quickly regained her composure and said sharply, a young and attractive woman like Judith is a much better fit for our family than a wife like you. Leave Samuel's house now. I calmly replied, then first, please sign this. I pulled out a divorce document I had prepared earlier and showed it to my husband. Where did this come from? David asked, surprised. The day you told me to leave the house. I got it right after you said that, I replied quietly. David, stunned but resigned, signed the document. I also signed the divorce papers and said, I'll submit this to City Hall. As for my things, I'll arrange for a moving company to handle them once I find a new place. I want you gone as soon as possible, my mother-in-law yelled. That evening, I packed a bag and headed to my parents' house. They were surprised to see me return but welcomed me with understanding, seeing everything in my eyes.